Have you ever stood by a runway and looked at a machine so strange that you would bet your life savings it could never fly? We are talking about aircraft that completely defy logic. These are machines that look like flying wooden boxes, stripped-down chassis without tails, and contraptions violating every known law of physics. Yet, every single one of them actually took to the skies. Today we are counting down 10 bizarre aircraft that look like amateur garage projects, but hide brilliant engineering secrets. Stay with me until the very end, because our number one spot looks like a mutated creature from a sci-fi movie. If you love mechanical history, hit subscribe and let us get into it. Kicking off our list at number 10 is the ultimate symbol of the grassroots underdog, the Evans VP1 Volksplane. Designed in 1968 by William Evans in the United States, this machine was built specifically for the everyday guy who wanted to fly on a budget. Evans designed it to be constructed in a standard suburban garage, using marine-grade plywood and simple hand tools. At the heart of this humble bird is a repurposed 40-horsepower Volkswagen Type 1 engine. Weighing a mere 440 pounds empty, it features a 24-foot wingspan. Visually, the Volksplane looks exactly like a flying soapbox derby car. When this thing starts up, the unmistakable, sputtering, air-cooled rattle of that vintage Volkswagen engine fills the air, vibrating right through the open cockpit. The pilot sits completely exposed to the elements, bundled up in a heavy leather jacket and goggles, feeling every gust of wind. It was never meant for cross-country travel or high-speed maneuvers. Instead, it was purely designed for the sheer, unadulterated joy of low and slow weekend flying out over the countryside fields. The most incredible fact about the VP1 is that Evans never patented the design. He intentionally kept the blueprints cheap, so thousands of amateur builders worldwide could experience flight. Imagine the bravery required to trust your life to a wooden box glued together in your own backyard, powered by an old car engine pulled from a junkyard. It is a testament to the raw optimism of the late 60s. However, if trusting a Volkswagen engine at 2,000 feet seems bold, the vintage contraption coming up next is even crazier. Moving back to the golden age of grassroots aviation, number 9 is the legendary Pietenpol Air Camper. Born in 1928 in Cherry Grove, Minnesota, this home-built icon was the brainchild of Bernard Pietenpol. He was a self-taught mechanic, with a dream to make flying affordable for the average American. The Air Camper is a strut-braced parasol monoplane. It is constructed entirely from spruce and plywood. Pietenpol ingeniously utilized a heavy water-cooled Ford Model A engine. Pumping out 40 horsepower, this cast-iron block was a familiar sight to every rural mechanic. Seeing an air camper in flight is like watching a piece of living history float across the sky. The pilot and passengers sit in tandem, deep within open wooden cockpits. They are surrounded by the mechanical symphony of exposed push rods and the distinct chug of a Ford Model A engine. An engine that sounds like it belongs on a dusty country dirt road. The high-mounted wing provides incredible downward visibility, though the massive automotive radiator perched right in the airflow creates undeniable drag. It was the ultimate rural escape machine of the Great Depression. Bernard Pietenpol's genius was proving to the aviation elite that you did not need an expensive aircraft engine to fly safely. He famously flew his heavy air camper to a major aviation convention just to silence the wealthy skeptics who laughed at his automotive engine. Decades later, thousands of these wooden marvels are still lovingly built by purists, builders who crave authentic, oil-stained aviation. It is a brilliant piece of old-school ingenuity. However, if flying a heavy Ford engine strapped to spruce sounds sketchy, the next aircraft takes danger to a terrifying extreme. Taking the number 8 spot is a machine that stripped aviation down to its most terrifyingly bare essentials, the DFS SG38 Schulglider. Designed in Germany in 1938, this primary glider was mass-produced to train thousands of amateur pilots. Unlike conventional aircraft, the SG38 has absolutely no engine, 0 horsepower, and a payload capacity limited precisely to the weight of one single, terrified student pilot. Built from ashwood, steel tubes, and fabric-covered wings spanning 34 feet, it was an unpowered, ultra-lightweight sled meant solely to teach basic flight control. The visual design of the SG38 is nothing short of a flying skeleton. There is no fuselage, no enclosed cockpit, and absolutely zero crash protection. The pilot is literally strapped to an open wooden plank perched out in front of the main wing, with their legs dangling over the edge. Launched from a hillside via a massive rubber bungee cord pulled by a team of men, the glider gets yanked into the air violently. The sensory experience is pure, unadulterated wind noise and the terrifying creak of flexing wooden spars. This aircraft holds the mind-blowing record of being one of the most widely produced gliders in history, with over 10,000 units built. Imagine being a teenager in the late 30s. You are told to sit on an exposed wooden beam and then slingshot it off a mountain by your friends. It was the ultimate extreme sport of its era, demanding absolute nerves of steel before pilots moved to real motorized aircraft. But while this glider lacked an engine entirely, the next entry threw common sense away and landed a wooden boat on water. At number 7, we dive into the bizarre world of amateur amphibious aviation with the Volmer VJ-22 Sportsman. Designed in 1958 by American aeronautical engineer Volmer Jensen, this home-built flying boat is a fascinating mashup. It combines salvaged aircraft parts and do-it-yourself boat-building techniques. Jensen drafted plans that utilized commercially produced wings and tail surfaces from classic Piper Cub aircraft. The beating heart of this oddball is typically an 85 to 100 horsepower Continental engine. It is cleverly mounted high on a pylon above the wing to keep the propeller dry. Looking at the VJ-22, it visually resembles a small, beautifully crafted mahogany speedboat that somehow miraculously sprouted wings. The hull is constructed from marine plywood covered in fiberglass, giving it a nostalgic nautical aesthetic. When it lands on a pristine lake, the loud roar of the top-mounted pusher propeller echoes across the water. This is followed by the satisfying, heavy splash of the wooden hull slicing through the waves. Inside the cramped, enclosed cabin, the pilot has to simultaneously manage both aviation flight controls and a retractable water rudder. What makes the Sportsman truly incredible is that over 100 of these home-built flying boats were successfully completed by amateur builders in their own garages. Jensen sold over 1,000 sets of plans. He proved you did not need a multi-million-dollar factory to conquer both the sky and the sea. It represents a golden age of mechanical cross-pollination, a time where rugged outdoorsmen built fishing boats that could cruise at 90 miles per hour. But, as strange as a flying wooden speedboat is, our next wire-braced pioneer machine is incredibly fragile. Stepping back to the absolute dawn of flight, number 6 is the iconic, fragile, and utterly daring Bleriot XI. First taking to the skies in 1909, this pioneering French monoplane laid the groundwork for almost every aircraft that followed. Powered by an unbelievably crude 25-horsepower Anzani 3-cylinder fan engine, this machine had a wingspan of 25 feet and weighed roughly 500 pounds. It utilized a tractor configuration with the engine up front. It featured a wooden framework held together by tension piano wires and a revolutionary wing warping control system. The Bleriot XI looks less like a vehicle and more like a massive, intricate kite made of bicycle wheels, linen, and string. Seeing it fly is a nerve-wracking experience. The castor oil-lubricated engine spews a thick blue, terrible-smelling smoke directly into the pilot's face. Meanwhile, the entire wire brace structure visibly flexes and wobbles in the breeze. The pilot sits completely exposed in a shallow wooden basket. They are gripping a steering column that required intense muscular effort to physically warp the wings. It completely redefined what was mechanically possible at the turn of the century. The Bleriot XI achieved legendary status when Louis Bleriot did the unthinkable. He flew it across the English Channel. without a compass, flying through heavy fog and relying on a notoriously unreliable engine that was famously cooled by a rainstorm halfway across. His survival was a testament to raw pioneer grit. It proved that human courage could overcome the terrifying limitations of early mechanics. But if you think wing warping and piano wire are a crazy way to fly, wait until you see the completely stripped-down metal minimalism of our next contender. Before we cross into the top 5 weirdest flying machines in history, I have to ask, would you dare strap into an exposed wooden glider or trust your life to a 1930s Ford engine? If you love these deep dives into old-school mechanical craftsmanship, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell. It really helps YouTube show this video to more hardcore gearheads like us, and you will not miss our next mechanical breakdown. Now let us get back to the madness. Crashing into the number 5 spot is a deeply obscure yet wildly fascinating piece of experimental aviation known as the Sneden M7. Built strictly under the FAA's Part 103 ultralight regulations in the United States, this machine represents the absolute extreme of minimalist flying. To legally qualify, it must weigh less than 254 pounds empty, it must carry only a single occupant, and have a top speed restricted to just 55 knots. The M7 utilizes a tiny low-horsepower engine, completely stripping away any excess weight to stay airborne. Visually, the Sneden M7 looks less like a proper airplane and more like a motorized flying clothesline. It is essentially an open-air skeleton of thin aluminum and steel tubing. It features a highly exposed cockpit where the pilot sits completely out in the open, gripping a simple control stick. The wheels are fixed to a spindly undercarriage, and every control cable, strut, and hinge is visibly exposed to the rushing wind. When it flies, the entire structure twitches and jerks in the air currents, offering a terrifyingly raw sensory experience. The allure of the Sneden M7 lies in its radical dedication to accessibility and pure, unadulterated danger. It was built for the maverick who wanted to fly without the need for an expensive pilot's license. It utilized steerable front wheels and a terrifyingly simple control system. Imagine strapping yourself into a flying lawn chair made of metal tubes, completely exposed to the elements, and trusting it thousands of feet in the air. But while the M7 is a minimalist masterpiece, the next machine possessed a hidden, deadly aerodynamic flaw. Landing at number 4 is one of the most infamous amateur aircraft ever conceived, the Mignet HM293, widely known by its terrifyingly accurate nickname, the Flying Flea. Designed in the 1930s by French radio engineer Henri Mignet, this bizarre machine was supposed to be the Model T of the air. Mignet completely eliminated the traditional tail elevator and ailerons. Instead, the aircraft featured a bizarre tandem wing layout, powered by a tiny motorcycle engine producing around 30 horsepower. The pilot controlled altitude by physically pivoting the entire main front wing. The visual presence of the Flying Flea is delightfully absurd. It looks like a tiny squat wooden insect with 2 wings stacked awkwardly close together. In flight, it buzzes loudly like an angry hornet, cruising at a sluggish 60 miles per hour. Mignet designed it to be inherently stable and supposedly impossible to stall. This made it deeply appealing to working-class enthusiasts who desperately wanted to fly. Builders across the world rushed to buy the book, gluing together these tiny wooden contraptions in basements, dreaming of taking to the skies. But the Flying Flea hid a deadly aerodynamic secret. As amateur pilots built and flew them, a terrifying pattern emerged. If the aircraft entered a shallow dive, the airflow between the 2 wings would compress, creating an uncontrollable aerodynamic lock. No matter how hard the pilot pulled back on the stick, the nose would drop further, leading to a fatal crash. It was a brutal reminder of the extreme dangers of amateur aeronautics. Now, if you think a tiny wooden insect is crazy, our top 3 enters the realm of heavy metal military oddities. Breaking into our top 3 is a machine that looks more like a flying Victorian bridge than an airplane, the massive Caproni Ca.3. Designed in Italy during World War I by Giovanni Battista Caproni, this heavy bomber was an absolute titan of early military engineering. Entering service in 1915, it boasted a gigantic wingspan of 74 feet and weighed over 7,200 pounds fully loaded. It utilized 3 massive water-cooled engines, generating a combined 450 horsepower of deafening, ear-shattering thrust. The Caproni is a chaotic visual nightmare of struts, twin tail booms, and canvas. The most insane feature is the forward gunner's position. The front gunner was forced to stand completely exposed in a tiny metal cage. This cage was bolted to the very front tip of the central nacelle, hanging perilously over the earth with nothing but empty air beneath his boots. The noise inside this aircraft was catastrophic. 3 massive engines roaring in unison, cold wind blasting through the open framework, and the heavy smell of hot oil and gunpowder. Flying the Caproni was a brutal test of endurance. Pilots had to muscle massive, heavy control wheels just to keep the gigantic kite flying straight. The sight of this massive, triple-engined beast lumbering across the sky must have looked like an alien dreadnought to the soldiers in the trenches below. It represents a time when aerospace engineering was based on raw, brute force scaling. However, while the Caproni was a giant of the First World War, the machine at number 2 is a Cold War relic that redefined the helicopter. Claiming the number 2 spot is a bizarre marvel of Soviet engineering that looks like a flying mechanic's toolbox, the Kamov Ka-26. Introduced in 1969, this light twin-engine, multi-role helicopter threw conventional design rules out the window. Unlike traditional helicopters, the Ka-26 has no tail rotor. Instead, it utilizes a coaxial rotor system with 2 massive rotors stacked on top of each other. Powering this beast are 2 colossal 325 horsepower radial piston engines. They are strapped awkwardly to the sides of the cabin like oversized muscular shoulders. Visually, the Ka-26 is jarringly utilitarian. It essentially consists of a bubble cockpit, 2 massive side-mounted radial engines, and a strange, empty void directly behind the pilot. That void is its genius feature. The helicopter is modular. Ground crews could bolt different payloads into the empty space: a chemical hopper for crop dusting, a passenger pod, or a cargo flatbed. The sound of those massive 9-cylinder engines firing up is a violent mechanical thunderclap that shakes the ground. Meanwhile, the coaxial rotors chop the air with a heavy rhythmic thrum. The Ka-26 holds the incredible distinction of being the only helicopter in the world equipped with piston engines to operate successfully in commercial service for decades. Pilots loved it because the lack of a tail rotor made it incredibly stable in heavy crosswinds. It is a masterpiece of old-school heavy metal Soviet engineering, valuing raw lifting power over sleek aesthetics. But if you think a modular, twin-engine, coaxial flying tractor is the strangest thing in the sky, brace yourself. Our number 1 spot is visually offensive and became a Hollywood star. Taking the crown as the most bizarre, extreme, and unbelievable flying machine on our list is the Transavia PL-12 air truck. Designed in Australia in 1965 by Luigi Pellegrini, this aircraft was purpose-built for the incredibly dangerous job of crop dusting in the rugged Australian outback. The air truck is powered by a massive 300-horsepower Continental flat-6 engine. But its layout is truly radical. It was built entirely around a massive 1-ton chemical hopper, placing the payload directly on the center of gravity. This resulted in a design that aggressively defies aerodynamics. The air truck looks like a mechanical monster that escaped from a post-apocalyptic junkyard. The engine and cockpit are perched bizarrely high above the fuselage, making it look incredibly top-heavy. Behind the massive engine, the aircraft splits into an asymmetrical twin-tail boom configuration, leaving a gaping hole in the back. Amazingly, beneath the pilot's lofty perch, there's a tiny cramped passenger cabin built into the rear of the fuselage. When this beast roars low over a field, dodging power lines at 100 miles per hour, It looks like an angry mechanical gargoyle. The air truck's bizarre, aggressive design was so visually striking that it famously caught the eye of Hollywood directors. It became the iconic, rusted flying machine piloted by Jedediah in the legendary 1985 film Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome. For the 50-plus crowd, seeing this beast on screen etched it into pop culture history forever. Yet beneath its horrific looks lay an incredibly sturdy agricultural workhorse designed to protect the pilot in a crash. The air truck proves that in heavy machinery, function always dictates form, even if that form looks absolutely insane. These machines are not just historical oddities. They represent the raw, unfiltered courage of engineers who refuse to accept the status quo. They prove that in the world of mechanics, if a crazy idea solves a real problem, it is never stupid. Now I want to hear from you. Which of these machines did you find the absolute strangest? If you could see just one of these bizarre aircraft in person, which would it be? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Do not forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell. See you next time.